Sure. My name is Barton Sidles. I'm with Hubject Inc. So the incentives that have really proven to be effective are definitely the purchase incentives on a state and federal level. Those I think have helped improve EV adoption. And then in addition to that, you have the benefits that you get, especially here in California, to be able to drive in the carpool lanes and also toll roads. That's, I know, been something very attractive for a lot of EV drivers and looking at buying an electric vehicle because they are not actually having to pay for the toll roads. Sadly, that is coming to an end very shortly. But in addition to that, there's also company benefits. There have been companies that give an additional benefit on top of federal tax credit and rebates. And also then just the amount of charging stations that have been installed recently. The growth of those, I think, have been a great incentive of lowering the barrier for EV adoptions when people are thinking about either an internal combustible engine or an electric vehicle. I would say in other states it comes down to two areas. One is on a government and on a utility side. On the government, for them to be able to pass laws that give certain incentives or at least encourage the EV adoption on many different levels. We've seen here in California the rebate that's been very successful and on the federal side as well. So I think in other states that would be a way for them to do it. But also on the utilities, for them to give an incentive for people to install chargers at home, since the majority of charging does happen there. And then that's on a B2C level. On a B2B level, on a business-to-business level, a way for utilities to work with the charging networks to deal with the high charging, that high demand charges. I know that that's quite a sticking point. Sometimes if you don't get the utilization of a charging station, then it doesn't really come down to results in quite an unfortunate financial situation. So I think with governments and utilities looking at this, there would be a great way for incentivizing in other states. More chargers are definitely beneficial and chargers that charge faster as well. But it's not just only that, it's the accessibility of the chargers that I think is very important, which means that interoperability for people to be able to charge at multiple networks very easily. And this is something that Hubject does, where we have a platform that enables interoperability and e-roaming for people to be able to have one account and one card, but to be able to charge at multiple networks. And in addition to that is also the speed of the charging stations. So for example, Electrify America is installing an enormous amount of charging stations across the United States. I think that's going to really help. They're doing fast charging at 150 and up to 350 kilowatts. So that's very impressive, and that gives a very quick charge for people. And then it's also the destinations, the scene where people will be charging, whether that is in, say, at a destination of a movie theater or in a hotel in case they're traveling long distances. So definitely the speed at which the charging stations are able to charge and also the number of stations are going to be very beneficial. Most of the people now already charge at home. I think it's a number of about 75% of people do. And so therefore that takes care of a lot of the charging. But of course people are always afraid that they're going to run out. And I think that that's one of the largest barriers for EV adoption is the range anxiety. And so therefore the high power charging networks are very important, and that's what's being installed now by a lot of the big networks. So that is definitely home charging is going to be where a lot of it happens. But when people do want to travel long distances, they need to look and see where are they able to charge at hotels or along highways. And then the interoperability becomes important again at that point, because they may not be a member of a network that is in either in a different city or in a different state. So once all these come together, that will definitely help. But for the time being, I foresee that charging will be remaining at home a majority of the time. Additional technologies, as I see it, are really one is interoperability that I talked about before, where interoperability is so important to allow people to charge multiple networks. And this is what is going to take away this anxiety from people thinking that they may not be able to charge in other parts of the city or in other parts of the state or in the country. In addition to that, one of the big technologies that I see is going to be a game changer is ISO 15118 and the use case of Plug&Charge. This is really the most ultimate user experience of taking the charging cable from the EVSE and putting it directly into the vehicle and then walking away. Because of the secure exchange of digital certificates, all the authentication and authorization is done, which is really the step that Tesla came up with several years ago. And now the current and legacy OEM and new car manufacturers are wanting to implement. And it creates an amazing charging user experience that is very simple. And in addition to that, then you have smart charging and bidirectional and induction charging. So it's a very exciting time. And then I would say in addition to that, you also have the wireless. So that's going to be a really key part. When people are able to not have to do anything, there's no moving parts of just being able to charge your car wirelessly. So the future definitely is renewable energy. It's just a matter of how one is able to fully integrate that into the charging experience. Right now, unfortunately, you just can't have a solar panel that is able to take the solar energy or from wind and put it into the vehicle. What is needed is kind of a middle step, which is battery storage, which is fully there. And so I think that one is able to integrate that together, and then you can have an electric vehicle from a lot of people that are interested in the experience of helping the environment, but using the energy from renewable sources. So it's going to be coming quickly, and I think that will be a great tie together for EVs being powered fully by renewable energy. I think that inductive and wireless charging is definitely going to be a big part of EV adoption in the future and the way the cars will be charged. I think that it's probably going to be something that will be on a fleet level and on probably medium and heavy duty initially, almost in the transportation with buses. And then it will go down into vehicles. One of the game changers in that will be autonomous vehicles, because clearly you don't have anybody that is going to be able to take the plug and put it into the vehicle. But with wireless, you don't need to have there is nothing to plug in. So the autonomous vehicle will be able to drive over the charging pad and the charging session will begin. So it's definitely something that will be coming. I would actually like to see it sooner rather than later. I think the tipping point will be a commitment by the OEMs, but also by let's say fleets and in the autonomous vehicle world. As soon as we see more autonomous vehicles out on the road, then we'll see, I think, a greater adoption of wireless charging. So I think it's a natural progression. You needed to see cars being out there. Prices of those EVs need to come down. Then you needed to see the power sector also making an investment to ensure that there's the power for those vehicles. But I think that ultimately this will continue on, and the autonomous vehicles is kind of the next step. And having those autonomous vehicles being electrified, having them being charged wirelessly, it's just really kind of the next step in how the EV adoption will continue, and then moving on to autonomous vehicles.